Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Steelheads Weekly with your hosts, Darius Domingues and Mark Freitas. On today's episode, we're going to break down World Juniors talk. We have that coming up very quickly here in December, and some Steelheads are involved. We're going to talk about the Steelheads games last weekend and heading into a pretty big week this week. And, of course, some expansion talk at the end of the episode. It's going to get very interesting because the OHL is expanding and it's coming quickly. But first of all, Mark, how are you this week?
Great, just like the Steelheads.
That's right. Back on
I
track.
didn't personally pick up 4 points on the weekend. I mean, I did yesterday at ball hockey. I picked up a couple. So you know what? I did pick up 4 points just like the Steelheads, but differently.
Different points. The Steelheads, you got yours on the score sheet. The Steelheads are back in the standings, back in the playoff picture, and it's a good time. They're back to playing well, and a lot of guys are back from injury, but some are not. We'll get into that as well. But I wanted to start with World Juniors talk because that's a hot topic, and the World Juniors are
Yeah.
around the corner, and it's the best time of year. It's going to start on Boxing Day, and everyone's excited. It's right after Christmas, and it's fun to watch. And a couple Steelheads were selected, and not just for Team Canada, but other teams in the tournament as well. But we'll start with Team Canada and the Steelheads, and one that I was very surprised about. Obviously, I mean, Porter Martone's going. I kind of figured that. I think
Yeah.
everyone could agree that we figured that. Carson Rakoff is also going, which I mean he's had a fantastic season. The Brampton Steelheads have two players in the top five scoring in the OHL, so that's great. And one that I was honestly a little bit surprised about, not because, I don't think he's great or anything. I think he's one of the best goaltenders in Canada right now, especially for this age bracket, is Jack Ivankovic was named to the team. And again, he could still get cut at this point, but I don't know. I don't think he will. I think he's actually going to make this team. And we'll get into it, Mark. But were you surprised by any of the picks? And what are we expecting from these guys in the World Junior? I think they're about to put on a show on the world stage.
I'm not surprised by any of the Steelheads picks. I am surprised that there are some other players that are left off of Team
Well, we're going to
Canada.
get into that as well. Yes.
Some that are even in the OHL, some in the WHL.
Yep.
So I kind of want to get into that after. But no, I'm not surprised. Well deserved for guys like Raycroft. He was on that team last year, so he did pretty well. He had 4 points in 6 games, if I'm not mistaken. So he did pretty well. Martone and Ivan Kovic, no surprise as well, because they were on the U17, if I'm correct,
Yep.
the under 18, and the Gretzky Helenka. They went back to back to back. So it's well deserved for them, and this is the next step in their young international career.
Yep.
So I hope it all goes well for them. And Ivan Kovic wasn't projected to be on Team Canada, I don't think. So it's very surprising that he is on there from not being on other. But like I said, he wasn't on any of the analysts' projections of the team. So that's nice to actually have, you know, a little bit of proving. I guess I want to say people wrong in
Yep.
a way. So it's good for him and it's good for the team. And again, there was an article I saw from October, and he is projecting. I've said it in my articles. He's one of the best goalies in the draft. I think he is the best,
Forget, forget.
unbiased.
I mean, forget the draft. To me, he is the future of Canadian goaltending. I think, like in the
Yeah.
NHL for the national team, this guy has it. You can tell when you watch any Steelheads games. Like we have the pleasure of watching him in person. Like the way he moves and tracks pucks, like he's amazing. Like
Hmm.
he's one of the best goalies I've ever seen, and he's still so young. And I think the reason he was left off of a lot of lists, and I was starting to think this as well. Like I was thinking earlier on this season, he's not going to make the team or even get an invite because I think notoriously, especially with the goaltending, Team Canada and the World Juniors, they like to pick older, even though maybe
Yeah.
they're not as skilled. They like to go with older guys, and Jack Ivankovic is not. He's draft eligible this year. Notoriously, Team Canada is picking guys who they're talking pregame. This guy's drafted by this team, right? And he's playing goal for Canada, and the backup is drafted by this team, right? And they're maybe in their 19-year-old seasons. This guy is 17 years old still. So,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean anything. He's a fantastic goalie, and I think he's going to make the team. I really think he's going to come into camp, show them exactly what he has, and he's going to make the team. And you know what? I think he has potential to even be the starter this year. I know that's, a lot of people may look at the goalies who are even Carter George, who's invited from the Owen Sound attack. I know a lot of people are going to look at these goaltenders and be like, maybe he'll make the team next year. Maybe he'll make the final cut like next year or the year after. No, I think he can honestly be the starter of this team this year because the amount of games that he's won for the Steelheads and like kept them in games. Imagine an all-star team basically in front of him, like what he's going to be able to do. So I can honestly see this guy being the starter, and I know it's a little bit biased on our end because this is Steelheads Weekly, but I've been so impressed by this player since he's come into the league, and I think there's potential he could start with Team Canada.
And I even said it last season when he was starting, he looked calm as a rookie, and he didn't get lit up really, just like how many other rookie goaltenders do in the OHL.
Yep.
And again, I think him coming in the playoffs last year was a big step for his development. And even this season, I think if he doesn't get suspended in those 4 games, I think the Steelers are probably in a better position than what they were. So obviously, when he came back, he did have a little bit of rust. And it seems like now he's back into form because he's helped the Steelheads get these last 2 wins. And he had a good prospect game, too. And even if he makes Team Canada as a third string goalie, even better. You're going to get experience because then you know for a fact we're just going to call up for next year anyway as well. And that'll be here before we know it anywho.
Exactly. And sometimes, like I mentioned, it's not about skill. Sometimes there's a lot of politics involved with the selection for Team Canada. And even if you get selected to the team, like you said, like a third string goaltender or maybe, the backup or one of 3 goaltenders, I should say, you might not end up playing, right? They might just be like, no, this guy's older. We want to play him over Jack Ivankovic. But I think it's a good experience. I think if he is to make this team, travel with them, be around the team, like that's really good experience to bring back to the club team, the Steelheads, and then obviously use it towards next year because this guy is going to be Canada's goaltender a lot heading into the future. Like he is going to be the starter. Like I said, he's the future of Canadian goaltending. So to pivot away from goaltending a little bit, because obviously we covered it, I think he has the potential to be the starter. Yes. Obviously, Porter Martone has had a great season. He's going to come into this team as a younger player, honestly, like a kind of a younger player. It's his 3rd season. It's going to be interesting to see what he does because he's had a great season so far. And I wonder if on this team he ends up playing. I think it's going to happen. He's going to play probably on the same line as Carson Rakoff as well because they've been having such a dynamic season together. Mark, as you put it originally a couple months ago, the dynamic duo for the Steelheads this year. So they've both been having a great season. And I was a little bit surprised, honestly, to see, because of how much talent there was, to see Rakoff actually make the team as well.
Yep.
Just because, there's a lot of names we're going to get to in a second that are missing from this team, I think, that probably should be there as well. So it was a little bit surprising to see him, but I think it's well-deserved. I'm not saying it's not deserved because it is well-deserved. He's had a great season. And I think that, Canada having a little bit of chemistry already built into the lineup is going to be huge. But they both had great seasons. I think this is well-deserved. But what do you see from that, Mark?
No, I see it could work out. I can see them being on a line together, especially since they've dominated the OHL essentially this year. As I've stated, they are the dynamic duo.
That's right.
Thanks, Steelers. I expect that credit out soon. But they've done great together, and I think them playing on a bigger stage against teams that won't be familiar with how they play necessarily could be an advantage for them. We saw it in the NHL with the Olympics years ago with Chris Kunitz and Sidney Crosby when their chemistry got together from Pittsburgh all the way to the 2014 Olympics. Yep. So, I mean, it could be the same thing here in the World Juniors. And I'm trying to think of another World Junior squad who had 2 guys from the same team and they dominated. I mean, unless we could say Tavares and Eberle. But then they didn't play in the same league.
They didn't really play on the same team either.
But when they played in the Islanders, they kind of had that chemistry.
That's true.
So I mean, it's similar to that where they can bring that in, and again, Ray Carson was on the team last year, so he's a year older from that. Obviously, not a good tournament that Team Canada had, and he could bring that in from what he had last year to this season, with the struggles that the team had and build from that.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. There's chemistry built in. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they can do with the national team there. And I don't have the full – I believe Zidlicki may have been selected as well. I can't remember if he's
Yeah.
old enough. I think Zidlicki was also selected. Fibberger, if I'm not mistaken, has been selected as well. So the Steelheads are going to be in tough here next month without every
Oh
single one of
yeah.
their best players. I mean,
Well,
make no mistake about it. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean the thing is too, like, for the Canadian ones, these guys were invited, so
Yes,
it's still not a guarantee.
they have to make the
If
team.
they'll, I mean, I think Carson will make it because he was on it last year. It's kind
Yeah.
of a given. Even Cowan got invited, so they use the word invited, but they already have some of those guys who could have been the team.
They're going to make some
Uh,
cuts, but there's guys like Cowan, like you said, Rakoff, who've been there before. They probably want to keep them on the team. I mean, Martone, I think, is a lock at this point as well, just because of how well he's played this season. But
yeah,
again, you got to come to the camp and earn it.
Taja Ginla, that's a guy who I thought would be invited.
See, so
I
there's a couple guys missing. There's TJ Ginla who's missing. Michael Misa's left off the list. I thought
I
that was
noticed that.
very, very interesting. Like, there's a couple names. I mean, Misa alone being left off the list is pretty shocking. He's going to be a top 5 at least pick this upcoming draft, and I thought it was interesting. I think you want to go with guys that, and also Team Canada. This is another story. 16 of the players selected to camp are from the OHL. That is a large percentage of the entire team. So. We'll see how that dynamic works out. But yeah, Michael Misa missing. I think that's interesting.
Well, I find that a lot of, I'll get to that in a second, but I find a lot of every year for the World Juniors, we get guys from like the OHL. Majority of guys in
Which
the OHL, I find.
it feels that way. Yeah, there are some years I feel like maybe 5-6 years ago there's a lot of guys from the WHL. I felt right, but I think like since then again it's been very OHL heavy again.
Yeah, so it's been nice, and like we've had a mix of that so many years.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of good teams with a lot of good mix from all the leagues. But to get to your point of like Misa, yeah, I'm shocked he wasn't on there. I thought for sure because he's leading the OHL.
Yeah. And I mean, he's leading the OHL in, I believe, goals as well by one. He
Goals
has
and
20.
points.
He has 25 goals and points. He has 25 goals in 25 games, so he can definitely score. Martone's up there as well, second, and then obviously Rakoff in 5th place in points. So great season from all of them, honestly. And Michael Misa, which we'll touch on in a second. I want to get to the Steelheads games this weekend.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Snubbed for sure. I think he should have at least
Yeah.
gotten an invite. I think that was pretty shocking, honestly.
Well, God forbid if if they have a bad tournament again, they'll be like, all right, who if scoring's an issue, they'll be like, who should we have brought?
Right. Yeah.
We've seen guys like that 2014, was it 2014? 20, yeah, it was 2014. The team where it was the no, sorry, 2013 team. That one was disappointing because I remember they left off Nerds, then they left off Domi, and they left off so many guys, and they could have used them and they didn't. That was the year Malcolm Subban was the goalie. Remember they had all that
Yeah.
hype,
Yeah.
and then where we were out in the round robin or the quarterfinals.
I'm not even sure they made it to the quarterfinals that year. Yeah, it was pretty
That was
disappointing. One of the really
bad.
disappointing finishes for Canada in that one. But
Yeah.
congrats to everybody who was invited, both on the Steelheads and not. And it's going to be exciting. World Juniors coming up soon, and we're going to be able to cover that as well. And it's I love watching that tournament. It's always fun.
And
right after Christmas.
hopefully one of those guys can bring back a medal because like he brought back bronze last year.
Yes, he did. And I have a feeling that
They're gonna miss him
they'll
for a
be
bit.
bringing him back, and they're gonna miss these guys. That's for
They're
sure.
gonna miss
So
a lot of them actually.
I'm not sure how the Steelheads are going to get through this stretch, but a lot of guys are coming back from injury. But we'll get to that in a second. Let's cover last weekend. We'll preview next weekend. We want to get into expansion stuff as well. Last weekend, we'll just go through it quickly. Steelheads going to Sarnia. I said last week, you basically have to win this game, like no matter what. Just come in and win the game. And it looked like they were not going to do that. They went down 2-0 pretty early in the first period, and I was like, uh-oh, what's happening here? But your top guys get you back in the game. You have big games from Porter Martone again with 2 assists, Rakoff scoring again, and then obviously Adam Zidlicki's had a great season this year, and Jack Van Volsen also
fantastic.
chipping in on points. Yeah, he's honestly had a great season. So Zidlicki gets on board his 11th of the season. Obviously, not touching some of the other guys. Even Luke Meeson's really turned it on. He has 13 on the season as well. But good bounce back there, I thought, in game, and they get the win.
Yeah, they did. It's all you needed. That was a big one. So you take out a team that you should beat, and then again they got led by the guys that they needed to be led by. So
Exactly.
at least they stepped up when it mattered. And Martone, I think was what I saw it was like he hit a milestone. I'm trying to remember what it was. He hit a milestone.
It wasn't 100 OHL goals, was it?
Mm,
Could have
checking it.
been. I feel like he has more than 100 OHL points, but yeah, I think
Let
this was a big
me get
win.
it.
While Mark finds that, I think it was a absolutely must win. I think for the Steelheads because of where they were in the standings, how many games they've lost of late. Obviously, they got off of that 6 game losing streak with a
Got
couple
it.
wins last year. But yeah,
He got
last week.
150 points in his career.
There we go. So that's a pretty big milestone. He's been in the league for 3 years here, and he's putting up a ton of
And it was
points.
against his old team.
And it was against the team that did draft him, and he originally played for and was traded for
Yep.
Del Mastro at the time, which was a little bit crazy. But
That was a crazy trade.
you move into Saturday, and I was saying again, I feel like both games were must wins, and they come into Saturday. Michael Misa gets a goal. You're trying to keep him off the board, but he gets a goal. But nonetheless, Luke Misa with another big game, 3 assists in this one. Fibiger had 4 assists. He had his hands on almost every goal in this game. Fantastic again. You're giving up far too many shots. I think the power play is still an issue in this one, but you are playing a pretty good team in the Saginaw Spirit, so I will let them off the hook because they did win the game. They did pull it out. So I think that's all fine and dandy, but big performances from your top guys once again. And one thing that I thought was a little bit crazy in this game, Porter Martone and Michael Misa fought. They had a fight. And it wasn't much of a fight. There wasn't too many punches thrown, but they did drop the gloves. And I thought that was pretty cool because both teams' best players dropping the gloves. I think that's, you never see that anymore.
We need more of that. That's like the old video game style.
That's right. Where your top guy, the captain, goes after the other team's guy. But no, I thought that was cool that they both dropped the gloves there. 5 minutes, they're back out on the ice. I thought that was sweet. But the Steelheads pull out a huge win against another good team, and they're right back in the playoff race here. Not even the playoff race. I mean, with a couple good performances the last couple of weeks, they pulled themselves into sixth. They're only 3 points back of fifth. And then after that, you can climb up the standings pretty quickly if you put together some wins here, which I think, Mark, they have to before these guys leave for World Juniors, because if you're in a situation where maybe you're falling back down to eighth, around the time you're heading into January, that is a steep mountain
Yep.
to climb. Like, don't try not to put yourself in that situation, right?
And they're playing a very bad Guelph team Wednesday.
Yes. So great wins this weekend for the Steelheads, and we can preview next weekend. They play Guelph on Wednesday. It's a school day game. I was like, oh, a game on Wednesday. Maybe I'll go check it out. Nope. 11 o'clock in the morning. It is a school day game against the Guelph Storm. Unfortunately, it's Guelph's only trip to Brampton this year, and it's a school day game, so that's a little unfortunate.
I
But
was gonna go and then I forgot I was working.
yeah, so 11 a.m. Tough to make those on a Wednesday, but good for the school day games. Those are exciting, and I mean, fond memories of those as well. So always a good time. And then they play the Niagara Ice Dogs, who they beat recently, who are a great team as well, top of the Eastern Conference. You can make up some ground there. So they play
Yeah.
Niagara in Niagara at Niagara on Friday. Then on Sunday, a classic 2 p.m. start. Not too many of those anymore. At home in Brampton against Erie. Brampton's usually had Erie's number when healthy, so I'm not too worried about that game, I think. But I think they can get a collection of wins here. I mean, you have to beat Guelph. The arena is going to be packed with kids screaming. Guelph's not a great team.
Yeah.
Win that
And it's
game.
a certain.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's Wednesday's a guaranteed should be a win.
should be.
Friday's a coin flip,
Yeah.
and Sunday is just a certified classic Sunday 2 p.m. game, which should be 2 points. So I'm expecting at least 4 points out of this. Hell, maybe five if you take an OT or shoot a loss in Niagara.
I think this is a 4 to 6 point weekend. You absolutely have to take 4 points out of this weekend to stay in the race and give yourself the best chance possible heading into World Junior or the World Junior break. So, you're playing a couple teams that you can beat. And even Niagara, you can beat them at this
Oh
point.
yeah,
So.
and they're fully healthy from last time when they played them. They didn't have
Exactly.
anyone
Exactly.
really.
So I think that they can absolutely beat that team. And they're still missing a couple players, the Steelheads are, but they're slowly getting back to the full health. And I think that they're going to do just fine this weekend. They're back on track a little bit and playing well. Now, Mark,
Yeah.
some interesting
Yes.
stuff league-wide. And, I mean, it kind of does affect Brampton and the Brampton Steelheads, which we'll get into. There's a new commissioner. There's a new commissioner,
Yes.
and he did an interview. And I'll kind of let you take this away, but there are talks of expansion, and this is not something where they're talking about it now and it might happen in 5 to 10 years or something. They're talking about this is happening quick. They absolutely want to expand, which I never thought was going to happen with the OHL, honestly. Maybe a 2-team expansion or something, but it sounds like they want to expand big time and soon.
So yeah, so from this is from Ryan Kennedy of I believe I want to say the Hockey News. His Twitter handle is THN Ryan Kennedy. Um, so he put a tweet out 4 days ago saying, uh, it sounds like Belleville could be back in the O, and then Sens Talk quote tweeted Ryan saying, reports are that the Belleville Senators, Ottawa's AHL affiliate, may be out on the move to Hamilton. According to the rumors, with Belleville in the process to get an OHL team, uh, sorry, there's rumors that Belleville could be in another OHL team, and it does make sense if the Suns move to Hamilton and Belleville comes back in the O.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, these are just rumors, so let's see what happens.
Yeah, there's just chatter going
End
on,
quote.
and I think end quote, mic drop. But I think that I think that can kind of put to bed the rumors of the Brampton Steelheads to Hamilton as well, if that's the plan, if that does happen. But I
Yeah.
think it makes a lot more sense personally at this point for Hamilton because of the size of the city and obviously close proximity to now the Brantford Bulldogs. I think it makes more sense for that city now to get an AHL team rather than an
Yeah.
OHL team. And I think that they can support an OHL team. We've seen it. I went to the final in 2018. They can
Yep.
absolutely support, like, the people show up for that. But
Yeah.
during the regular season, I don't know if they really do because it's the OHL to a degree and it's a
That's what I
bigger
was gonna
city.
go to your
Yeah.
point, actually, because I find that Hamilton is more of an AHL city opposed to a junior hockey city. And let's be realistic here. Both cities, Belleville and Hamilton, lost their respectful teams
Yes.
in a way.
Yeah.
The Bulldogs were a big AHL city because they were the Montreal Canadiens farm team. People went out to go watch those guys, and they had every bull in that arena open.
Yeah.
When the Bulldogs went to the O, switched down to the O, they closed half of the stadium. No one really cared too much about junior hockey there until, like you said, they went to the finals.
Yeah.
So I think this is better for everyone involved if it does happen. I think Hamilton does deserve another AHL city. I do think they should get an NHL one, but that's a topic for another day. As for Belleville, they deserve a team, and they should have never lost their team.
I think so it worked out for Belleville that they got a team right away, but it was an AHL team, and I think Belleville is more of a junior hockey town.
Right, it's vice versa. It's
Yes.
like yeah,
But I
you
think,
go on.
business decisions, obviously, it didn't work out that way. So I think it's going to go back to the way that it probably should be. And especially, I think Hamilton could support an OHL team and would get one again if Brantford didn't move to Brantford, right? I think it's too
No.
close and it just doesn't work. Hamilton's too big of a city, I think, to support an OHL team, which sounds weird, but I think that is a thing at this point in time, at least. I think they would support an OHL team, especially if they're doing well in the playoffs. But the everyday games, I don't see that being a thing. AHL, I think, could do well there again. And, I don't know what AHL team it would be at this point. Maybe it is the Belleville Senators. It would just be the Hamilton Senators or something like that.
Yeah.
But Belleville, I think, has enjoyed the AHL, enjoyed having a team there. But I think it's a junior hockey town, and I think they'd rather an OHL team come back.
Yeah.
And I think they would like it to be the Belleville Bulls again. And I think that would be really cool because you can do that with expansion. I mean, you could do that with relocation as well, but you can do that with an expansion team.
And that's the thing. I realistically think we will see the Bulls again back in the OHL Belleville, because the Belleville also does do a Bulls night. There, the Sens will wear classic Belleville Bulls jerseys,
Yeah.
and those are one of the sickest jerseys in the OHL.
Yes, they
So
are.
I think they should bring back the Bulls. I had a friend who did a project on it years ago in college about bringing the Bulls back. Did pick up traction. Obviously, nothing came to be. So. We'll see. I hope Belleville gets the team back. I genuinely think, Darius, the old teams that are gone from the OHL will be making a comeback. I think Toronto will probably get one, even though I don't know how. They probably will. Let's be realistic here, because the league has a weird fetish for Toronto and the OHL. They're definitely going to bring back Belleville. I love to see some OHL teams that used to have teams come back. I think it'd be great. I mean, I love to see Plymouth Whalers come back. Those are some sick jerseys, but they'll probably won't. But I genuinely believe the Bulls will be back, and we will see the Toronto St. Mike's Majors again for the third time.
I
The
think
Bulls and the Majors will be back.
I so despite the league's best interest, I think that, well, first of all, Belleville will work, so I don't want to group them into that. But I think despite the league's best interest, because of what we've seen in Toronto, Mississauga, Brampton, and now Brampton again, they want a team in Toronto. I don't know why. I don't know why they think it'll work, because junior hockey, I think, does not work. Toronto is way too saturated now, I think, for hockey as well, because you got the PWHL in there, and they're doing fantastic. So shout out to them. I mean, they're selling out games. So, at the professional level, I think OHL might not work here, right? No. I don't know if it really does. And that being said, I love the Steelheads. I'm going to continue to watch them and support them, but I'm not sure like bringing Toronto into the league, unless it's like subsidized somehow, is going to work. Like I just don't know if they make money. I don't even know where they play. Won't. You can't play at a Coca-Cola Coliseum, so I have no idea where they would play.
Unless they play out of either A, Ryerson, or B, they'll play out of St. Michael's College again. That rink was small.
But here's the thing. I mean, you move them out of there. I might have just taken your point. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you first. I want to hear you have to say.
They took them out of there at the time for that reason. The rink was too small, and they're like, okay, we want to expand the league. The league, they need to make some more money here, some more tickets. But I think it's very interesting that they do want to move that way. It's a new commissioner, and maybe has new ideas, and maybe there's a way to make it work. Maybe there's an owner that's willing to make it work. But we'll see. I think it's very interesting.
No, maybe, because remember when the Majors first moved, they tried to get them to Rico. Leafs said no. Second best thing was Mississauga, and we all know how that turned out. So, I mean, I guess they could go back to St. Michael's College. I mean, all the banners are there and keep all the history.
Yeah.
So that'd be fun to go see those banners once again. But I mean, we'll see. I mean, like, does a part of me want the Majors back? Absolutely. That was a team I loved.
Yep.
And then they moved, and the Steelers came in. Follow the Steelheads, follow the Ice Dogs, follow all those teams, right? So I agree. I don't know how it'll work. I think, again, the Bulls and Majors will be back, but in what capacity, of how we know one's going to work.
Sure.
How the other one's going to work.
Yes. And I think for one to work also in Belleville, they're going to have to move the AHL team out of there as well. So I think it'll probably have to go hand in hand, which I think might happen at the same time. It happened at the same time the first time. So or around the same time, I should say. But it's going to be very, very interesting to watch. And they want a team in Toronto, I think. I wonder how that affects the dynamic of Brampton as well. I don't think it really will, because Toronto is really, I think, separate now in the last couple of years. Like, anybody who lives downtown is not going to go out of their way to watch a Brampton Steelheads game, let's say, or you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's the outskirts of Toronto that would go watch Brampton, but if you're in Toronto, you'd watch that team. But I'm not sure if it'll work, but I don't know. I'm ready to be proven wrong, that's for sure. So we'll see how that plays out. But it's very interesting. Any final thoughts, Mark?
Yeah. I mean, no, not really. I mean, we'll see what happens with everything. I've got nothing else to talk about on the expansion there, because I think we've covered majority of it.
Yep.
I mean, unless they want to bring a team back to Mississauga, we'll go for round number 3 if you want 4, actually. So I mean, I'm down for it. They did a good job on that ribbon board at the Paramount Fine Food Center.
Yep.
So how about we just bring a team back to Mississauga at this point?
Well, I've learned now, especially in the OHL, because
never
say
never.
Never say never. But we'll see what happens. I think it's very interesting. But for Mark Freitas and Darius Domingues, this was Steelheads Weekly, and we'll see you guys next week. Obviously, a game coming up in just 2 days here, so we're gonna have lots to talk about again next week, and the World Juniors are coming close. And we'll see you all next week.